In this video, I'm going to give you 4 ideas on how you can better build your sales force. Hi, Bill Caskey, author of Same Game, New Rules and co-host of the Advanced Selling Podcast with Brian Neal. Welcome to today's program. You know, we get this question a lot of, how do I build a sales force? Companies will call us and they may have 3 or 4 salespeople, but they want to get to 10 or 20 or 100. And the question becomes, how do I do that in the best possible way? And it's difficult because when you look at the whole sales profession today, there are experts who will tell you that about 40 to 50% of salespeople are playing out of position. They're not in the right role in sales. They shouldn't even be in sales. So when you're starting a sales force, you have to recognize that you want to minimize the amount of time you spend replacing people. So I'm going to give you these 4 tips and hopefully this will help. Number 1, I think you should profile your buyer. What I mean by that is understand you probably have 2 or 3 levels of buyer inside companies. Maybe your service you call on CFOs, or maybe you call on company owners. Just make sure you're careful because you want to profile that person so that you know what their demographics are, which means what age are they typically. Like if you're calling only on CEOs, you're probably going to find 40 to 60-year-old men or women, but primarily men, unfortunately. You're going to find if you're calling on CFOs, those people have a certain profile. So make sure you really understand your potential buyer, because step number 2 then is profiling your seller. So who would you imagine would be good calling on that person? We find a lot of times people pay no attention to that. And we think it's one of the most important things is how are you going to help these people connect? So if you're calling on a CFO who's the average 45-year-old man who lives in the Midwest and has maybe manages a $5 million company, then you can't hire a high school kid to go call on them because it's just not going to fit. And also one thing you might want to do is think about the personality of these people. So if you're calling on a CFO or an accountant type who's very rigid, who's very inflexible, who pays a lot of attention to detail, and you go out and find a high-flying salesperson who likes to wing everything they do, there's not going to be a good connection. Number 3, filter rigorously. And I say hire slow, fire fast. Filter rigorously means have a profile set up of who you want and make sure that you filter through those people very cautiously. Make sure that they match, if not all the traits, 70, 80% of the traits. It's very expensive to hire someone, bring them in, train them, and then have to let them go because they weren't the right person. Some people would say it costs over 2.5 times their annual salary to all the time you spend, then you got to go back to the headhunter and replace them. So the idea is filter rigorously. Make sure your filters are in place. Don't just take somebody because their resume looks good or because they look good. Go through the process. Be very cautious and very conservative about that. But when they don't make the grade after 90 days, 120 days, when you start to see the handwriting on the wall, get rid of them and start over. And the 4th thing is we believe, naturally, since we're a training organization, you should be training continuously. And what that means is short, frequent bursts. Don't bring them into the home office for 4 days or 5 days once every 5 years. That does no good at all. It's a total waste of money. I would rather you bring them in once to start the training for a day or 2, but then do monthly bursts. Maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's a webinar, or maybe it's some kind of a sales manager-led discussion on how to handle certain objections or how to handle certain circumstances, how to tell your story better, how do you find the customer's problems and pain. Heck, you can show them these videos. But we think you have to train continuously. The reason is because there's always another level. A person who's earning $100,000 a year wants to get to 150 is going to have to learn different skills, going to have to brush up their skill sets and become better at things. But if you're earning 150 and you want to get to $500,000 a year, guess what? Different skills, more skills, got to brush up on some things. So there's always another level. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you're interested in building a sales force, I hope this has helped to maybe open your eyes to a couple of ideas. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see the other 11, make sure you register below, put in your email address, your first name, and the other videos will be on their way to you instantly. See you next time. Bye.